This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Turkey's parliament to hold an emergency session for Libya troop deployment. Guinea-Bissau President-elect Umaro Sissoco Embalo's victory faces court challenge. And Somali forces killed 20 al-Shabaab terrorists in Lower Shabelle province. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the programme. In business, small and mid-sized traders in Kenya to pay 3% sales tax from January 2020. And in sports, Egypt is set to start using VAR technology in domestic league. We begin with the regional actors involved in the Libyan conflict. Turkey's parliament is due to hold an emergency session today. MPs will be voting on a bill that mandates the deployment of troops in Libya. This comes 2 days after an extraordinary Arab League summit in Cairo. A meeting which sought to come up with ways of responding to Turkey's military plans. It's warned against the foreign interference in the Libyan conflict. Turkey supports Libya's government of national accord, led by Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj, while Egypt, a member of the Arab League, backs the rival administration in the east under General Khalifa Haftar. The GNA, or the Government of National Accord, has been fending off an assault on the capital, Tripoli, by Haftar's forces since April 2019. Meanwhile, Tunisia's President Kais Saied has said his country will remain neutral as he urged all Libyan parties to negotiate an end to the conflict. Saied has held a meeting with the National Security Council to evaluate the security situation in Tunisia. This comes only days after the visit by Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who is pushing for troop deployment to Libya. CGTN's Adnan Chouachi filed this report from Tunis.
President Kais Saied has refuted false allegations circulating on social media on Tunisia's so-called plan to support a military intervention in Libya.
After the last with the Turkish president, I want to emphasize that Tunisia will never accept to be part of any coalition or alliance. We'll never tolerate that. Any centimeter from Tunisia's territory is not under national sovereignty. The false allegations are either a result of a wrong evaluation and estimation or are claimed by the same source that are used to lies and slander.
Specialists on the Libyan issue estimated that the accelerations of events in the North African country will undoubtedly have repercussions on Tunisia.
Tunisia must remain equidistant from the various Libyan factions, advocating a unified position banning any foreign military interference. We will lose our credibility in supporting any Libyan party or siding with any foreign military plan.
Analysts have also criticized the position of the Tunisian state, presidency and diplomacy.
Tunisia's reaction to the Libyan crisis and peace initiative is late. We are the first concerned country and people by the escalation of the war. Our security is tied up to Libya's internal security and stability.
Tunisian diplomats and security experts believe that the situation in Libya will evolve into a conflict affecting the entire Mediterranean region, given the increasing number of regional and international interference in the Libyan conflict. Experts in Libyan affairs believe in the importance of coordinating with neighboring countries, Algeria and Egypt, to relaunch Tunisia's tripartite initiative that was proposed by late President Beji Caid Sibsi. The initiative aims to reach a solution bringing together all the Libyan parties while rejecting any military intervention. Adnan Chouachi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, for more on this developing story, we are joined by CGTN's Michel Bar-David, who is in Istanbul for us. Michel, what is the latest on Turkish MPs voting on the troop deployment bill.
Yes, Karen, the Parliament is expected to debate on this issue in just about an hour at 11 GMT. The parties right now are split on the topic. Of course, the ruling Justice and Development Party, AK Party, is in full support of the Turkish president. They are expected to be in favor of this motion. The MHP Nationalist Movement Party, who has an alliance with the AK Party, is also expected to be in favor of this motion and support it. The main opposition, CHP, Republican People's Party, is against it. The leader, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, has already made several statements on the topic, saying that they do not want to risk the lives of Turkish troops in that area in Libya. There was also a statement made by the HDP Kurdish Party's leader, Selahattin Demirtas, who right now is jailed. He made a statement criticizing the Turkish government for this move, saying that the reason Turkey is being forced into these kinds of actions really is because of the government's foreign policies at the moment. He's saying that they've made negative and bad choices regarding foreign relations, and that's why instead of being able to negotiate and sit at a table with some of the foreign countries involved, instead Turkey is forced to carry out military intervention. So a harsh criticism from Demirtas. There was also a statement made by E-Party, which is a nationalist party as well, stating that they are still questioning whether or not this is the right decision for Turkey, because they are again also questioning whether it's worth sending Turkish troops and risking their lives at a region that does not share a border with Turkey, and also stating that it could turn into a lingering conflict just as it has in Syria, and that is a major concern for them as well. So they're split at the moment at the parliament.
Okay, we'll return to you in a moment. We are now joined by Bashir Abdel Fattah, a researcher at the Al-Ahram Center for Political and Strategic Studies in Cairo. Thank you very much for joining us. Bashir, what is Egypt's position regarding these events in Turkey?
First of all, let me thank you for having me and wishing you a happy new year. In my opinion, I think Egypt, from the beginning of the Libyan crisis, refuses the foreign military intervention in the Libyan crisis. All the time, the Egyptian president calls for the diplomatic settlement to the Libyan crisis. As to Turkey, as we know, the relation between Turkey and Egypt nowadays is not good at all. So Egypt thinks that the military Turkish intervention in Libya will escalate the crisis in Libya deeply. So Egypt is moving on two dimensions. The first one is the diplomatic dimension. President al-Sisi called most influential leaders in the world, from America to Russia to Europe, in order to put pressures on Turkey not to send military troops to Turkey. And the other dimension is the military one. Egypt made military exercises in the Middle East, Navy military exercises, and also all the time it assures that Egypt can protect its interests in the Middle East and in the Mediterranean.
Okay, thank you. We'll return to you in a moment. Back to you, Michelle, in Istanbul. How do Turkish citizens feel about the country's involvement in the Libyan conflict?
Well, citizens in Turkey are also split. Let's remember that just in October, there was also a cross-border intervention from Turkey, this time to Syria, but there was a lot more support from people at that time, because there was, when you're talking about a cross-border intervention, when people can actually feel the threat, it's much more different. So people were actually sensing a very tangible sense of national security threat when it comes to Syria, both from the YPG, which Ankara perceives as a terrorist organization, but also due to ISIL terrorist organization, which is also active in Syria. But the situation is very different when it comes to Libya, because it does not share a border with Turkey, so it would mean sending troops overseas. So that's why their perception for Turks is very different, because they can't really feel the threat at this moment that much. But at the same time, there are others who are understanding that there is a self-interest for Turkey to have and maintain the GNA, the Government of National Accord in Libya, as a power, a legitimate power there, because Turkey has signed a maritime boundary agreement with the GNA. So it's very much in Turkey's self-interest when we're talking about economic potential for Turkey. So it seems both sides, again, we have for and against for society as well. So society, like the parliament, is also split, Karen.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Back to you, Bashir, in Cairo. Earlier, you were talking about Egypt's split position of its two dimensions, diplomatic and military. How is it possible then to make a distinction between Sisi as head of the African Union and Sisi as the Egyptian president?
It's very difficult to do that because, as we know, Egypt now is the leader of the European Union for the year 2019. Egypt has a very long borders with Libya, more than 1,200 kilometers. And also Egypt is afraid of terrorism and the ISIS troops in the eastern part of Libya, and also is afraid of the Turkish military stationing in Libya. In addition, the African Union also agree with Egypt that Libya could be a threat to the stability of the Black continent because of ISIS and terrorism. As we know, ISIS came from Syria and Iraq to the eastern of Libya, to Derna, which is so close to the Egyptian borders. And from Derna in Libya, they can go to many other countries in Africa to destroy the stability of the continent. In addition to that, the illegal immigration from Libya to Europe and from the African countries to Europe through Libya, we can say that Libya now is a lawless country. And the illegal immigration and the terrorist groups can use Libya to go to Europe through the Mediterranean Sea. So I think there are common values, common goals between the European Union and Egypt in dealing with the Libyan crisis. So it will be difficult to draw this line between the Egyptian interests in Libya and the African interests in the same time. In addition to that, it is the speciality of the Turkish-Egyptian relation. It is something maybe obvious that the contradiction in interests between Turkey and Egypt may add some troubles to the area and the competition between Egypt and Turkey through the Mediterranean gas and oil, in addition to the conflict between Ankara and Cairo, and according to New Ottomanism and the Muslim Brotherhood and so on.
Okay, thank you very much for your analysis. That was Bashir Abdel Fattah there, a researcher at the Al-Ahram Center for Political and Strategic Studies in Cairo. And of course, earlier we spoke to CGTN's Michelle Bar-David in Istanbul. Moving on to other news now. In Guinea-Bissau, presidential elections have concluded with former Prime Minister Umaro Sissoco Embalo emerging as the winner. He took 54% of Sunday's runoff vote, but Embalo's opponent is vowing to contest the results in court. CGTN's Daniela Pearson reports.
The announcement of Umaro Sissoco Embalo's presidential victory has sparked celebrations in Guinea-Bissau.
Votos nacional. Domingos Simões Pereira.
National vote, Domingos Simões Pereira, 254,468 votes, equivalent to 46.5%. Umaro Sissoco Embalo, 293,359, equivalent to 53.55%.
The 47-year-old Embalo will succeed incumbent President José Mario Vaz, whose tenure was marred by political infighting, a poorly functioning parliament and corruption.
Guinea-Bissau now has a president of the republic from this January the 1st, and it is I, Umaro Sissoco Embalo. Guinea-Bissau will stop being the country you have known, a Guinea-Bissau where anyone does just anything. That is over. That is over. Never again. Guinea-Bissau will be a respected country. There will be respect for each citizen, and no one will be excluded.
As the newly elected president, Embalo has the task of creating political stability and curbing widespread poverty in the West African nation.
I will make this country one in which everyone will contribute directly or indirectly towards reconciliation and mutual confidence. Never again will this country be divided.
There were 12 presidential hopefuls in this race, but Embalo's main opponent was Domingos Simoes Pereira, who lost by a margin of just 7%. He was also another former prime minister and the candidate for the ruling party. Pereira has been challenging the election results and says he will take the case to the Supreme Court.
The people of Guinea-Bissau deserve to be told with certainty solid results which correspond to the will expressed at the ballot box.
Since yesterday I am in the street. How dare they steal victory from Domingos? What has Domingos done to them? He won the elections and they have been stolen from him.
Embalo now faces the difficult task of modernizing Guinea-Bissau. The West African country of 1.6 million people has suffered 9 coups. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
Somali forces on Wednesday carried out an operation against the al-Qaeda-affiliated terror group Al-Shabaab in the southern part of the country. An army commander said that 20 terrorists were killed and 7 villages were liberated. Osman Abdel Malik Malim, a special forces commander, told local media that Somali soldiers have liberated the villages in the lower Shabelle province following a military operation in the region. Several other terrorists were wounded during the mission, with Malim adding the operation will continue until the group is wiped out of the region. This operation comes 4 days after Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for a suicide truck bombing at a busy intersection in the capital Mogadishu. Around 80 people, including university students and 2 Turkish nationals, were killed. Meanwhile, in Côte d'Ivoire, Charles Blé Goudet, a former ally of the ex-president, has been sentenced to 20 years in prison. A court in Abidjan sentenced him in absentia. Blé Goudet remains in Europe after being acquitted by the ICC for crimes against humanity. CGTN's Daniela Pearson reports.
Charles Blé Goudet was once known as Côte d'Ivoire's General of the Streets. He was said to be the right-hand man of former President Laurent Gbagbo. During Gbagbo's presidency in the early 2000s, Blé Goudet headed the notorious Young Patriot street militia.
This gentleman forgets that no army, however powerful, can come here and remove Laurent Gbagbo and then install him. It won't happen here in Abidjan. Not here in Abidjan. Not here in Abidjan. We are not prepared to negotiate our freedom. We are not prepared for Alassane Ouattara to replace Laurent Gbagbo.
Here, Blé Goudet refers to Gbagbo's bitter rival and current Ivorian president, Alassane Ouattara. During the post-election upheaval of 2010, some 3,000 people were killed after Gbagbo refused to accept defeat.
The youth of Ivory Coast, are you ready to join the army, to serve your country? I call on all youth of Ivory Coast to report to the army headquarters on Monday at 7 in the morning to enroll in the army.
Both Blé Goudet and former President Gbagbo were charged by the International Criminal Court. They were subsequently cleared of crimes against humanity. Blé Goudet has remained in Europe while ICC prosecutors appeal against the acquittals for rape, torture and other crimes, charges that Blé Goudet has denied.
All my political actions were always guided by only one principle: never write my name on the wrong side of history, and to not damage the legacy of my descendants and of my close family, and to not shed the innocent blood of my fellow citizens. I would never participate in that.
But many back home are still looking for justice. Ivorian prosecutors brought fresh charges against Blé Goudet for his role in the civil war. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
Well, let's now return to one of our top stories. That is the landmark election result from Guinea-Bissau. And we are now joined by CGTN's Deji Badmus, who is in Lagos in Nigeria for us. Deji, from the tone of his victory speech, what can we now expect of Guinea-Bissau under President-elect Embalo?
Well, Karen, what we all expect is what he actually said, that he's going to unify the country, unify the political class, and get the country out of poverty. He said it very clearly that Guinea-Bissau will no longer be the same again. Now, what has Guinea-Bissau been all this while? Poverty has been rampant. Drug trafficking has been a problem. Corruption has been a very big challenge as well. So what we expect and what every Guinea-Bissau will expect now is that the president, Embalo, now would tackle these challenges now head on, deal with the problem of corruption in the country, try to deal with the long-standing drug trafficking problem, and of course poverty, get young people jobs. There are quite a number of young people in that country who after finishing school are not able to get jobs. So they want to see the president of the country do that. Now the other thing would have to be how he deals with the political challenge in the country. Well, Domingos Simoes Pereira has said he's going to challenge the result at the Supreme Court. It's a very good thing that he's decided to take that legal step and not resort to self-help. People are waiting to see. Of course, it's not a good one because that will pose a challenge in terms of unifying the country. Now, everyone will be waiting to see how that Supreme Court judgment goes. But the fact is that the political system in that country, Mr. Embalo has to do something about it, because we are talking about a country where you have power now not completely vested in the president. He has to deal with parliament. Parliament is dominated by members of the, the long dominant political party in that country. That's the PAIGC, a party, of course, that lost the presidential election. So how Mr. Embalo works with parliament so that you don't end up with a situation like we had under President Vaz, where there were 6 or 7 prime ministers within a period of 6 years. We just have to, it's all up to Mr. Embalo now, how he is able to deal with parliament, relate with parliament, and then resolve all these political problems. Parliament, of course, would have to appoint his prime minister. He has the power to fire the prime minister. But going forward, how he relates with the PAIGC, good enough, he was a member of the PAIGC and then defected at some point. So how he works in tandem with the PAIGC and, of course, the other smaller political parties in the country would determine the course of Guinea-Bissau and how things probably shape out under his presidency.
Okay, thank you very much for that update. That was CGTN's Deji Badmus there on the election in Guinea-Bissau. We are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including for our locals.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. Africa Live. Find your voice.
In Somalia, a local initiative is providing a platform for journalists and artists in the country to showcase their best work, while also hoping to promote a positive view of the country. Art lovers can buy any of the items on display. As CGTN's Jane Keogh reports, this is an unusual art auction in the Horn of Africa.
My Gallery is a program by local media and technology companies in Mogadishu, providing a space for photojournalists and artists in Somalia to display their beautifully captured photos and crafted paintings.
The main purpose of this program, My Gallery, is to encourage the photojournalists and to show the outside world and what's happening, truly happening in Somalia, and to focus on more positive stories, and at the same time to reward the photographers in what they have done.
Intending to change narratives in the country, the work of some of the city's photographers, among them city journalists and artists, was also displayed.
I am grateful to be part of this event where one of my photos was showcased. I am actually a doctor by profession, but it's heartwarming to see your work presented in front of hundreds of people. That is great encouragement.
And out of them, the winners were chosen.
It is a great honor for me to be among the winners of the Best Photojournalist at my gallery event. I feel happy and excited as one of my photos was purchased. I encourage other Somali photographers to use their lenses to showcase the positive side of the country.
The event was also open to buyers who purchased a few of the photos that caught their attention. All this in a bid to support and encourage positive journalism in the country. The organizers hope to make this an annual event, showcasing the most appealing photos and paintings from all over the country. Jane Keo, CGTN.
To Nigeria now, where a dance group known as Dream Catchers is changing the music scene. The group is made up of children from underprivileged backgrounds, and they hope to empower others like them. CGTN's Deji Badmus has more.
The Dream Catchers Academy is home to kids with bundles of talents. With or without shoes, there are no dull moments during dance rehearsals like this one, where the kids get to display different movements in group, accompanied by loud cheers. One after the other, they also show off their skills as they sing along to popular songs. Sheyi Oluyole runs the Free Academy to empower orphaned, street and impoverished kids. She says her experience of poverty as a young child made her realize what it feels like to be in a helpless situation.
I believe every child deserves an opportunity to succeed, irrespective of their background. And I realized that there are so many people that have talent, but because they don't have the opportunity. So for me, it's like this academy is like a ticket for these kids to a better life. So they would have opportunities that they otherwise might not have ever dreamed of or had.
But this is not just about dance. Dream Catchers is about reshaping the lives of these children. Through the project, Oluyole also makes sure these kids are enrolled in schools. Her biggest projection is an art academy which provides life skills and formal education.
During school days, we only rehearse for 1 hour. And then during the weekend, we rehearse for longer hours, like 3-4 hours. And also, education is very important. We have a library in the house that somebody donated, where sometimes I make sure that the kids bring in a book report every week just to make sure that they are reading and staying up to date.
This is 9-year-old Oluwaseun. You can tell from watching her dance that she is happy to be here. Things became difficult for her family after her dad passed on. But ever since Dream Catchers took her in, her dream of becoming a great dancer has seen a major support.
Now I'm eating good food, and now I have good clothes to wear. I've gone for a lot of shows that we can't count it. I want to become a teacher when I grow up and a dancer. Because whenever I'm sad, when I dance, it always makes me happy.
Each child here is fed daily at a cost of about $3, and Oluyole is taking it upon herself to provide these from her personal savings, donations, and what the academy makes from paid shows. While this can be overwhelming on its own, she also has to deal with some of the children's psychological challenges.
They have different upbringings, different beliefs, different experiences, and sometimes it clashes compared with mine, considering the fact that there's something I want to see. I'm trying to raise world leaders.
The academy is intentional about the enrollment of students to ensure the proper values that will last a lifetime are instilled in them.
I always want to see progress and change in the life of every single child, and that's the reason why I make sure that I only have a number that I know that as an organization we can keep track of their daily lives.
In spite of its entertaining effects, dance is beyond movement for these kids. It's their hope out of poverty and a tool with which they can change the world. Deji Badmus, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
We've got all the business news coming up for you after the break, including... Small, mid-sized traders in Kenya to pay 3% sales tax from January 2020. And attempted theft caused Tuesday's Transnet Alberton blaze in South Africa.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
South African state-owned firm Transnet says the pipeline fire that rocked residents of Alberton in Johannesburg was the result of attempted theft. The blaze broke out on Tuesday morning. It forced residents within a 500-metre radius to evacuate their homes. The pipeline is one of Transnet's 3,800-kilometre high-pressure petroleum and gas pipelines, which runs from Durban to Gauteng. Transnet claims that it has been plagued by an unprecedented spate of theft incidents on its pipelines in the last few months. While the company has implemented numerous plans to stop the attacks, its CEO says criminal activity on the pipelines is increasing. Traders in Kenya are starting the new year with a new tax. According to the Finance Act 2019, small and mid-sized businesses will have to pay a 3% tax on their overall sales. The new levy takes effect as of January the 1st, so yesterday. Essentially, it had been dropped by the Treasury after most traders failed to make revenue disclosures. In its place, a presumptive tax was introduced at the rate of 15% of the single business permit fee issued by the local authorities. It's this presumptive tax that Kenya's revenue regulator has used as a base to reintroduce the new sales tax. There is widespread discontent in Liberia over a worsening economic crisis. Their businesses are on the decline and inflation has soared. Consumer prices are up while employment prospects are diminishing. Well, earlier this year, the International Monetary Fund reviewed Liberia's economic growth forecast for 2019 from 4.7% to 0.4%. Susan Mongeli reports.
Monrovia's sprawling seaside slum of West Point is a bustling place. With about 75,000 residents, it's a good choice for a food business. But Patience, a mother of 5, says business is not as it used to be.
The business is hard. It's we sell the business now. I mean, to able to get on the inside now, no way. It's expensive, it's hard. I tell the business now moving there before.
Before, she would make about $5 a day. Now she says it takes a stroke of luck to make half of that. It's not just failing business that Liberians are complaining about these days. Rising food prices too, which have doubled in recent months.
If we are not in recession, then I may say that sooner or later we'll get into depression.
Authorities attribute the situation to the 2014 Ebola outbreak that killed almost 11,000 people in the region and scared off both investors and aid workers. Then there is the withdrawal of the United Nations peacekeeping mission, whose average annual budget was equal to almost a quarter of Liberia's GDP between 2007 and 2018.
Lower Virginia used to boast of a large expatriate community. But since the last troops of the UN mission in Liberia left in 2018, places like this remain deserted. And it's a similar story in other parts of Liberia.
Brutus Sobe is a former driver for the UN in Liberia. He lost his job last year when the mission wrapped up. He now runs a taxi service, but his car broke down a few days ago.
Yesterday, a friend sent me mobile money, just $1,000 Liberian dollars to get it out.
This guy had to tell me, say, no money. He only send him money, but I not receiving money. So I had to beg him just to get my 1,000 from him so I can provide food today. Because my vehicle now is down. As I'm speaking to you. So last night, not easy.
We should have planned for sustainable growth after Omid Shahal left the country by investing into the real sector, whether agriculture, to stimulate some sort of growth. But our government only focus on extracting industry sector, which is the iron ore, where we export the robot. And the king of time, the resources price went down in the global community.
President George Weah has publicly acknowledged Liberia's economic woes and promised action.
When we had evidence of corruption, the president took action regardless of who was involved. And in this instance, that was the head of a public corporation. He immediately suspended him and put him at the disposal of our Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission, and he went to court. He was just recently vindicated. I need to mention that. So it shows that where the president needs to take the strong actions, and generate the necessary political will to act, he acted.
We have government owing civil servants months of salary payments. There have been entities and government ministries and agencies that have been protesting for salaries, for transportation arrears, owe them. All of these issues keep piling up. And then on top of it, we have a systematic breakdown in transparency institutions.
In October, government agreed to an economic and financial deal with the International Monetary Fund to implement reforms including wage harmonization, an affordable wage bill level, and prudence in overall public sector spending. Good news for now, but might take much longer to implement. Of concern for both patients and Brutus is immediate steps that will bring in more cash flow and lower food prices. Susan Mungeli, CGTN, in Monrovia, Liberia.
Urbanization is said to be proving to be a necessary evil in Rwanda. Slum dwellers in the country's capital, Kigali, are accusing city authorities of razing their homes without paying compensation. This has angered poorer Rwandans who feel marginalized by a government-led push to modernize the capital. CGTN's Terry Wangari has the details.
This month, the first of thousands of homes slated for demolition in Kigali's unplanned settlements were bulldozed. City authorities say the homes were built illegally on wetlands or areas deemed at risk from landslides and flooding. Those evicted were being offered lodgings elsewhere. But many of Kigali's poorest no longer feel welcome in a city that has undergone a major facelift.
As you see here, the situation is pretty bad. We demolished several houses without knowing where we will go next. There are people living in the streets while others live in local schools. The authorities came and said that when the rains come, there will be big floods. But those floods, nobody ever saw them.
The facelift is part of President Paul Kagame's master plan to turn Rwanda into a wealthy nation by 2050. The capital has been the focus of a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure blitz in recent years, with futuristic convention centers, five-star hotels, and modern flats altering the skyline. The city has earned a reputation among African capitals for its unusually ordered and clean streets. These slums are disparagingly called Banyahe, a name roughly translated to where I can defecate, and border some of Kigali's most exclusive postcodes. City authorities insist the evictions are for the good of the people, but a lot of the residents here beg to differ.
The inhabitants did not refuse to demolish the houses, but what should be preoccupying the government is first looking for a place for these people to stay.
President Kagame says his Vision 2050 for a new Rwanda will drive economic transformation for all in the tiny landlocked country where close to 40% live in poverty. Few at home disagree with his plan or the tremendous costs involved in rebranding Rwanda as a destination for foreign investment. But in Kigali, the rising condos and gleaming buildings have made life harder for ordinary Rwandans like Theodore, who are struggling to make ends meet. Terry Wangare, CGTN.
In Tunisia, major infrastructure projects are on hold. China's ambassador to the North African country says China is waiting for the new Tunisian government to relaunch negotiations on funding and implementation. CGTN's Adnan Chouachi takes up the story.
The Chinese ambassador stressed during a meeting with the press his country's willingness to fund major projects in 2020 and the next few years. The funding is linked to the negotiations with the Tunisian authorities.
China is keen and ready to stand with Tunisia to achieve economic and social growth as part of concretizing the recommendations of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation held in 2018.
The ambassador indicated that after completing the gigantic Sfax hospital project that will provide patient treatment in Tunisia's central and coastal regions, the Chinese government will provide the necessary equipment for the hospital.
The Chinese government studies the needs of Tunisian health institutions and the local population before offering financial, logistical or technical support. This approach has made all Chinese projects successful in Tunisia.
Wang Wenbin noted that a Chinese phosphate plant has been built in the governorate of Gafsa after a call for tender, adding work and the plant will start within 2 or 3 months.
China's significant investments in energy and infrastructure in Tunisia have revived the economy. The projects are realized within the vision of the Belt and Road Initiative. This is the most ambitious and successful economic project in the world.
The Cultural and Sports Center of Menzesix in Tunis is the most modern facility in Tunisia. It was built and renovated by the Chinese government. Now similar projects are underway or under study in the North African state. The Chinese ambassador to Tunisia pointed to the strengthening of cooperation and exchange between Tunis and Beijing in the cultural, economic and social fields. He also expressed his country's support to Tunisia and its war on terrorism that cannot be affected by any factors. Adnan Chouachi, CGTN, Tunis.
Let's now focus on a Kenyan-Nigerian duo behind one of Nairobi's most popular African gourmet burger joints. Riding the gourmet food trend, they've won over many with their fusion of history, culture and diverse flavour profiles. CGTN's Brian Toussaint has that story.
A Kenyan-Nigerian duo has created a gourmet burger brand that has turned into a sensation.
Hi, welcome to Mama Rocks. I'm Samantha. I'm Natalie. Yes, and we're just going to give you a quick tour of the restaurant. Yeah. So we're just about to open in the next 10 minutes. Yes.
Natalie and Samantha Mwedekeli are sisters based in Nairobi, Kenya. While studying in the UK, they realized there was an opportunity for them to create an African brand around the global gourmet burger trend.
So we're kind of flexible with the way in which we serve.
The two Mavericks have designed their own route to success. The use of extensive range of flavors and spices has given them a competitive edge against their competitors. They have also leveraged on their blended cultural heritage for unique branding.
We sell gourmet burgers that are influenced by cuisines from across Africa. I think we're the most heavily influenced by West African cuisine because our mother and grandmother are from Nigeria, so we grew up on their cooking. And we wanted to really share West African cooking with the world because we love it. We loved it as we were growing up.
The first Mama Rocks outlet was a food truck opened in 2015. The success garnered from this helped them open their second joint, also in the heart of Nairobi. Like many young Africans, the mantra, study hard, get a good job, work hard at it, and then live happily ever after, was often repeated to them. But this was not the vision they had in mind.
Myself and my sister do not have a culinary background whatsoever. We are not chefs, we're not trained, but we have a very good palate and we have a passion and we have a cause. And at the heart of our brand are its values. Yeah, we want it to be authentically African and fun. Yeah, and I think those are all messages that have come through in our branding. And I suppose our brand is also about self-expression, and we want other people to express themselves. And I feel like we've inspired other young people in Kenya that they can achieve whatever they want to achieve as long as they have the passion and they have the will.
These sisters describe their restaurants as a fusion of cultures and a celebration of Africa through the medium of food. True to this, their customers express the contentment every time they dig their teeth into the juicy gourmet burgers.
What sets Mama Rock's apart from other burger places? Their menu, the copy. I'm a big fan of copy. So just the way they describe the meals, the names for it, and also just like the environment of the place adds flavor, I think, to the food as well.
I tend to be a vegetarian, and I'm happy that they have veggie burgers. They have options for people like myself. But so far, the drinks here, finally it arrived. But so far, I like the vibe, the service, the energy. It's good to know that we have our African burgers, because, you know, burger tends to be a lot more westernized.
The duo ultimately hopes to reflect a modern Africa through food, and not the stereotypical or traditional Africa the rest of the world imagines. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
We're going to a short break now. Do stay with us.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In Burkina Faso, music is helping a convict to transcend the confines of his cell in the capital, Ouagadougou, as CGTN's Mohamed Abubakar now reports.
This correctional facility in Ouagadougou is home to Burkina Faso's latest musical find, Roland Tapsoba, aka Rolby.
I am here at Ouagadougou prison for fraud. I was convicted and sentenced to 60 months in prison. I have so far done 36 months, 3 years, and I have 2 more years left.
There are more than 2,000 inmates here with sentences ranging from a few months to life in prison. According to this budding musician, his new path not only gives him a sense of purpose, but also something he's looking to pursue full-time.
It's normal that when you do something bad, you end up in prison. But I think it's better to prepare for your exit. I have achieved my objective already, and I'm always looking forward to do so even after prison. I can go on and also, why not, support other convicts.
Tapsoba says his passion for music started even before he went to prison. But once convicted, it took him a while to find his inspiration again.
Once you accept that you're in prison, you start to accept other things. So really, I had a lot of ideas for the lyrics and everything, but at the beginning, I was a bit stressed. But after a while, I thought, no, why not start now?
It's during the weekly music lessons that prison guard Karim Ouedraogo noticed Tapsoba's talent. I think I detected a hidden talent, so I approached him and we talked and he agreed, so I gave him a guitar. He plays it often and creates his own compositions. You saw it, he immediately played with his fellow prisoners, and I think it's great for him and it's also great for us. With support from Freeman Tapili, a Burkinabe reggae star, Tapsoba has been able to record 4 songs. Through his music, he hopes to inspire the youth to go and work, be proud and live simply. Mohamed Abubakar, CGTN.
Now to Taiwan, where a military helicopter has crashed, killing 8 people, including a top military official. The Black Hawk helicopter, supplied by the United States, made a forced landing in a mountainous area near to the northern city of Taipei. Authorities say the crash killed Air Force General Shen Yiming. 5 of the 13 people on board survived. This is the latest in a series of aviation accidents in Taiwan. Another Black Hawk helicopter crashed off its eastern coast in 2018, killing 6 people on board. We are going to a short break now. All the sport coming up.
Africa Live. Find your voice.